Elon Musk, the tech billionaire and head of the Department of Government Efficiency under the Trump administration, has ignited a firestorm of controversy with two simple words. I agree. Musk took to X to express his support for the United States leaving both NATO and the UN, sending shockwaves through the international community. Utah Senator Mike Lee, a Republican, quickly jumped on the bandwagon, tweeting, "Get us out of NATO." Suddenly, we have a tech mogul and a US senator calling for America to abandon alliances that have been the cornerstone of global security for decades. Hi, I'm Patrick Christys, and this is GBN Originals. Ron Paul, the former US representative, weighed in as well, saying, and I quote, "Was this the Elon Musk who owns X speaking, or was it the Elon Musk who has become one of President Trump's closest advisors? Does it even matter? Having someone so close to the US president who advocates finally extracting the US from these international organizations is a significant and very positive shift for the United States." Well, let's be clear about what NATO is, shall we? It's not just some fancy little club where world leaders get together for a chinwag. It is a military alliance between European and North American countries that has been the backbone of Western security since the Cold War. And now we've got people in positions of significant power suggesting it's time to pull the plug. But why? Why now? Well, it seems that America, frankly, is getting fed up of footing the bill. And I can see the case for that. Trump's been banging on about this for years, hasn't he? He's always said that the US is protecting NATO members, but they're, quote, not protecting us. And he's got a point, I think. The US is carrying a heavy load when it comes to NATO funding. Now, let's not forget that Musk isn't just some random bloke spouting off on social media. He is the head of the Department of Government Efficiency under the Trump administration. So when he speaks, people listen. And right now, he's speaking volumes about America's future in those international organizations. Trump's been cozying up to NATO allies recently, but then he goes on and has a Barney with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, with his vice president accusing Zelensky of not showing enough gratitude to the US. Let's talk about the elephant in the room there, eh? Russia. Now, NATO was set up to counter the Soviet threat, and even though the Cold War is supposedly long over, Russia's still been seen as the big bad wolf, especially after they decided to waltz into Ukraine. Last year, Trump said that he'd tell Russia to do, quote, whatever the hell they want to any NATO member that doesn't meet spending targets. I suppose it's a little bit like telling the school bully to have at it with the kid who forgot his lunch money, isn't it? But not quite. Especially if that kid has deliberately forgotten his lunch money for the umpteenth time. It completely ignores NATO's Article 5, the all for one and one for all principle, that's only been used once, and that was after 9/11. But here's the thing. Is NATO still fit for purpose? The world has changed a heck of a lot since it was formed. We're not necessarily facing the same threats that we were back then. Maybe Musk and Lee are onto something. Maybe it is time for a bit of a rethink. Ron Paul has been advocating for the US to leave NATO for years. He reckons that after the Cold War, NATO's been looking for ways to stir up trouble. First, the Gulf War, then bombing Serbia in the name of human rights. It's a far cry, isn't it, from its original purpose. Paul also points out that the US is footing 70% of NATO's bill. And let's be honest, this is really the issue, isn't it? He argues that when Trump tried to dial down tensions with Russia, NATO members weren't happy. They even held their own summit to oppose the US move. Let's not forget the bigger picture here. This isn't just about NATO. Musk and Lee are also calling for the US to leave the United Nations. That's the organisation that's supposed to be keeping world peace. The jury's out on that one, though, isn't it? I mean, it's a bold move to come out and say this stuff. So what do we make of all of this? Is it time for a major shake-up of these international organisations, or actually are we playing with fire here? What does this mean for us here in Britain if the US leaves NATO? Well, here at GB News, we spoke to Andrew Griffith, MP, and let's hear what he has to say.
I'll ask you about Donald Trump, because there are reports this morning that he's considering relinquishing US leadership of NATO. It's obviously after he insists that the Europeans spend more on defence. Where would we be left if the US left NATO?
Well, we'd be left in a difficult position. The US is our longest, closest, deepest ally, particularly from a military perspective, and has been a cornerstone of NATO since its origination. So that would be a great concern. But as Kemi said yesterday, this is a time for cool heads, and where he's been absolutely right, and successive US administrations have made this point, is that we in Europe do need to step up, spend more on our own defence, and take more responsibility. It's encouraging to see many European leaders, led by our Prime Minister, talking about precisely that, but it's actions, not words, that matter. And now, including in the UK, it is important that all European nations step up and spend more on their own defence.
So, what do you think? Should America stick with NATO, stick with the UN? Let us know in the comments below. One thing is for sure, though, we currently have a Trump administration, an administration of the most powerful country in the world, that has decided to openly flex their muscles on the world stage in a way that, frankly, they could have done for the last 4 or 5 years. And they have decided that they don't want to be ripped off. Now, the argument would be, well, what is in the West's interest, in America's interest? And if they have to fork out the majority of the bill for that, then so be it. The other side of it is actually that other countries have been relying far too much on America for far too long. And now this is a wake-up call. If America pulls the plug, is that it, frankly, for NATO and the UN? Thank you for watching. This has been Patrick Christie's. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more. At GB News, we believe in the power of free speech. We're not afraid to ask the tough questions, challenge the status quo, and give you a voice. While others silence dissent, we champion the truth. By becoming a GB News member, you're not just supporting free speech, you're defending it. Please consider supporting us today. Together, we'll hold the powerful to account and make sure that your voice is always heard. Simply go to gbnews.com/support and stand with us for what matters most.